Dr. Helen Brooks wiped sweat from her forehead as she stood in the Sahara Desert. The sun was setting, but the heat still made her work clothes stick to her skin. Around her, the archaeological dig site looked like any other ancient ruin. Broken. Stones and sand-covered walls suggested an old human settlement. "Professor Brooks, you need to see this," called Mike Torres, one of her graduate students. He was kneeling next to a metal detector that was making strange sounds. Helen walked over to where Mike and Kate Williams, her other student, were working. Kate was holding a scanner that showed underground structures. "The readings don't make sense," Kate said. "This detector shows metal structures at least 50 meters down, but the historical records say this site is only 3,000 years old." Helen looked at the scanner display. The reading showed massive structures buried deep underground. The metal signatures were unlike anything she had seen before. "Maybe it's a natural formation," Mike suggested. "Iron deposits or something like that." "Iron doesn't form in these patterns," Helen replied. She had been studying ancient civilizations for 20 years. Something about this site felt different. That night, Helen called her contact at the Global Archaeological Commission. Professor James Reed had helped fund her research for years. "James, I need deep drilling equipment," she said. "Something is buried under this site, and surface tools aren't enough." "Helen, you know how expensive deep drilling is. What makes you think there's something important down there?" Helen looked at the scanner readings again. The metal signatures form geometric patterns, perfect geometric patterns. Nature doesn't work that way. 3 days later, a drilling team arrived with equipment that could reach 100 meters underground. Helen watched nervously as the drill began to work. If she was wrong, this would cost her research budget for the next 5 years. At 60 meters down, the drill hit something solid. The drilling supervisor, Carlos Martinez, checked his instruments. "We've hit a metal surface," he announced. "It's not bedrock. It's definitely artificial." Helen felt her heart racing. "Can you get through it?" Carlos switched to a diamond-tipped drill bit designed for the hardest materials. After an hour of careful work, the bit broke through. Air rushed up from below, carrying a strange smell that none of them recognized. "There's a hollow space down there," Carlos said. "Want me to send down a camera?" Helen nodded. Carlos lowered a fiber-optic camera through the hole. The images appeared on a small screen that everyone gathered around. The camera showed a vast underground chamber with walls made of the same mysterious metal. Strange symbols covered the surfaces, glowing with a soft blue light. In the center of the chamber stood what looked like a control console. "Those symbols," Kate whispered. "They look almost human, but not quite." Mike was recording everything on his tablet. "Professor, this technology is impossible. We're looking at active lighting systems that have been underground for thousands of years." Helen stared at the images. Something about the chamber felt familiar, like a memory she couldn't quite reach. Meanwhile, in space near the asteroid belt, Captain Lisa Grant and her crew were investigating a derelict ship they had discovered drifting alone. The ship's design was strange. It looked almost human, but with features that didn't match any known Earth vessel. "Security Chief Parker, what do your scans show?" Lisa asked. Steve Parker studied his instruments carefully. "The hull is intact, but there are no life signs. Power systems are completely dead. But, Captain, there's something odd about the biological scanners." "Odd how?" "The ship's internal air composition suggests the crew breathed oxygen and nitrogen. The gravity generators were set for Earth normal. Everything indicates the crew was human." Chief Engineer Ryan Blake looked confused. "That's impossible. This ship design is nothing like our current technology. Look at those engine configurations." They're completely beyond anything we know how to build. Communications Officer Amy Foster was scanning the ship's computer systems. I'm picking up data storage devices, but they're using encryption I've never seen. The computer architecture is human-derived, but incredibly advanced. Lisa made a decision. Prepare a boarding party, full environmental suits. I want to know what happened to that crew. An hour later, Lisa and Steve floated through the derelict ship's corridors. Their helmet lights illuminated walls covered with symbols similar to what Helen Brooks was seeing in the desert. The ship's interior was perfectly preserved, as if the crew had simply vanished. "Captain, look at this," Steve called from what appeared to be the bridge. He was standing in front of a command console that dwarfed anything on modern human ships. Lisa joined him. The console was covered with controls, labeled in what looked like an ancient form of English. Some words were recognizable, others had evolved beyond current understanding. "These weapon controls," Steve said quietly. "Captain, this ship has firepower that could destroy a Zephyrian dreadnought." "That's impossible. Human ships don't have weapons like that." Steve activated his scanner and pointed it at the weapon systems. "According to these readings, this ship carries something called gravitational pulse cannons and quantum disruption fields. I don't even know what those things are, but the power requirements are enormous." Back on Earth, Admiral Frank Hayes was having a very strange day. Deep in the Global Defense Initiative headquarters, computer systems that had been dormant for generations were suddenly active. His technical staff couldn't explain what was happening. "Admiral, we're receiving authentication requests from facilities that aren't supposed to exist," reported his aide, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Mitchell. Frank looked at the reports. The authentication requests included coordinates for locations across human space. Many of these coordinates were in empty systems where human colonies had never been established. "What kind of authentication?" Frank asked. "Military command. Codes, sir, but these codes haven't been used in over 1,200 years. Our historical records don't even explain what they're for." Frank studied the data. Something was happening that went beyond normal military operations. "Get me a secure line to Dr. Brooks's archaeological team. I want to know if they're seeing anything unusual." When Frank reached Helen Brooks, she was sitting in the underground chamber that her team had discovered. They had managed to expand the drilling hole enough for people to climb down. "Admiral Hayes?" "This is unexpected," Helen said. "Doctor, are you finding anything unusual at your dig site?" Helen looked around the chamber filled with advanced technology and glowing symbols. "You could say that. We've discovered what appears to be a control room of some kind. The technology is human but incredibly advanced. Human technology? How old? Based on the geological layers, at least 10,000 years. But Admiral, the equipment down here is still active. It's been waiting for something." Frank felt a chill. Waiting for what? Before Helen could answer, the control console in the chamber suddenly came to life. Screens filled with data, and a voice spoke in ancient English that was barely understandable. Authentication protocols initiated. Threat assessment confirmed. Lazarus Protocol standby mode activated. Awaiting final authorization codes. Helen stared at the screen. "Admiral, I think it's been waiting for you." Back in space, more derelict ships were being discovered by human patrols. Each one told the same story. Advanced human technology from an era that supposedly never existed. Captain Grant's crew had found 3 more vessels, all with capabilities that exceeded anything the current galaxy possessed. The galaxy's major powers were still focused on fighting the Krothak Dominion. They had no idea that humanity's true nature was about to be revealed. For thousands of years, human civilization had been playing a very long game. The Krothak forces continued their advance, destroying Federation colonies and enslaving populations. War Commander Thexvar believed he was conquering a weak and divided galaxy. He had no way of knowing that his actions were activating the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. In the underground chamber, Helen Brooks watched. As more systems came online, the screens showed the locations of thousands of ships, weapons, and facilities scattered across the galaxy. Each one had been waiting patiently for this moment. "Admiral," she said into her communicator, "I think we need to talk about human history, the real human history." Frank Hayes realized that everything he thought he knew about his own species was about to change. The quiet species had been quiet for a reason. They had been preparing. Jake Morrison walked through the grand halls of the Federation Council building on Nexus Prime. The walls were made of crystal that sparkled with light from 3 different suns. Alien delegates from dozens of worlds moved past him, their voices creating a buzz of different languages and sounds. Jake was the only human in sight. He reached the main council chamber where the emergency meeting was about to begin. The room was enormous, with seats arranged in circles going up toward the ceiling. Jake took his place in the small section marked, "For Earth." Around him sat representatives from the great powers of the galaxy. High Counselor Vexani of the Zephyrian Empire occupied the largest platform. Her blue skin glowed softly, and her 4 arms moved with grace as she prepared her notes. The Zephyrians had ruled parts of the galaxy for over 5,000 years. Their technology was so advanced that other species still could not understand how it worked. War Commander Thexvar of the Krothak Dominion sat across from her. His massive form was covered in thick armor that seemed to be part of his body. Red eyes glowed from behind his helmet as he studied tactical displays floating in front of him. The Krothak were known throughout the galaxy as the greatest warriors anyone had ever seen. Next to them sat Professor Kellen from the Altarian Collective. His large head pulsed with bioelectric energy as his brain processed information at incredible speeds. The Altarians were the galaxy's scholars and scientists. They had libraries that contained the knowledge of 10,000 worlds. Jake looked small compared to these ancient powers. Humanity had only joined the Federation 200 years ago. They were seen as peaceful traders and explorers who had basic technology and simple ships. Most aliens thought humans were harmless. The council session began with War Commander Thexvar speaking. His deep voice filled the chamber. The Krothak Dominion has expanded into the Outer Rim territories. These worlds are now under our protection. High Counselor Vexani's 4 arms moved in what Jake knew was a sign of anger. Those worlds were neutral zones. You have broken the Galactic Peace Accords. The Accords are old words on old paper, Thexvar replied. The galaxy has changed. The strong must lead and the weak must follow. Professor Kellen's head glowed brighter. Our analysis shows that 17 worlds have fallen to Krothak forces in the past month. Their new quantum disruption weapons have made our shields useless. Jake listened as the reports came in. The Krothak had attacked Federation worlds with weapons that could tear apart energy shields like paper. Entire fleets had been destroyed. Millions of beings had been killed or enslaved. "We must combine our forces," Vexani said. "The Zephyrian Imperial Fleet will lead the defense. The Altarian Science Division can provide technological support," Kellen added. Jake stood up. His movement was so quiet that few noticed at first. "Earth would like to help in the defense efforts." The chamber fell silent. Then Vexani began to laugh. It was not a kind sound. Help? What could humans possibly do? Your ships barely have faster-than-light travel. Your weapons are simple projectile systems that fire metal bullets. Other delegates began to whisper and laugh. Jake could hear their words clearly. Primitive, backward, barely space-worthy. Thexvar's red eyes focused on Jake. Human vessels would make good target practice for our gunners, nothing more. We have experience with different types of combat, Jake said calmly. Perhaps our methods could be useful. Your methods? Vexani's blue skin grew darker with amusement. You mean hiding behind asteroids and running away when real warships arrive? We have seen your patrol ships. They are barely adequate for cargo transport. Jake sat down without another word. Around him, the great powers of the galaxy continued their debate about military strategy and defense plans. None of them looked. At the human section again. Far from Nexus Prime, Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon. Through the main view screen, she could see the stars of the outer rim. Her ship was on a routine survey mission, mapping trade routes for human merchants. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command, said communications. Officer Amy Foster. Her young face looked worried. Put it through, Lisa replied. Admiral Frank Hayes appeared on the screen. His gray hair and lined face showed the stress of recent events. Captain Grant, you are to proceed immediately to Grid. Section 447. Krothak forces have been spotted in that area. Chief Engineer Ryan Blake looked up from his station. Sir, the Horizon isn't equipped for combat operations. We have basic defensive systems and some projectile weapons, but nothing that could face Krothak warships. Admiral Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Your orders are to observe and report. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Security Chief Steve Parker studied his tactical display. Admiral, our intelligence reports say Krothak quantum disruptors can punch through any known shield system. Even the Zephyrian dreadnoughts are helpless against them. I understand your concerns, Hayes said, but these are your orders. Hayes out. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in silence. Lisa looked at her officers. They were good people who trusted her leadership. The Horizon was their home, and they had served together for 3 years. Ryan, how are our engines? She asked. Fusion drives are operating normally. We can reach Grid Section 447 in 6 hours. Amy, send a message to all human ships in the area. Tell them to avoid Krothak patrols and report any sightings immediately. Yes, Captain. Steve checked his weapons systems. Our railguns are loaded and ready. Point defense systems are online. It's not much, but it's what we have. Lisa nodded. The Horizon was typical of human ships. It had simple fusion engines that other species considered slow. Its weapons were kinetic projectiles that fired metal slugs at high speed. The ship's armor was basic steel and ceramic composites. Compared to Zephyrian energy shields or Krothak quantum armor, it was like paper. As the Horizon traveled toward its destination, none of the crew knew what was happening in the deepest levels of Earth's surface. In chambers that had been sealed for over 1,000 years, ancient computer systems were starting to wake up. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, machines that had been silent for centuries began to hum with power. Status lights that had been dark, since before human recorded history started to glow. Massive screens filled with data as sensor networks across the galaxy came online. The computers were analyzing the current galactic situation. They measured the strength of the Krothak forces. They calculated the defensive capabilities of the Federation worlds. They reviewed the tactical reports from recent battles. When the analysis was complete, the machines began to send signals. These signals traveled through hidden networks that reached every human world. They activated systems that had been waiting patiently for this moment. On colony worlds that seemed to be simple farming communities, underground facilities began to power up. Mining asteroids that appeared to extract basic metals started revealing their true purpose. Ships that looked like cargo haulers began running diagnostic checks on systems that officially did not exist. The galaxy saw humanity as weak and primitive. They were about to learn how wrong they were. But for now, the ancient machines waited. The signals had been sent, but the activation codes had not yet been given. Jake Morrison returned to his quarters on Nexus Prime that night feeling frustrated. The great powers of the galaxy would fight the Krothak with their advanced technology and ancient strategies. They would win or lose without human help. He did not know that in a few days, everything would change. The quiet species was about to become very loud indeed. Captain Lisa Grant was studying the derelict ship's computer systems when her communications officer called out urgently, "Captain, we're receiving new orders from Earth Command, Priority Alpha classification." Lisa had never seen a Priority Alpha order before. Those were reserved for the most serious military situations. "Put it through, Amy." Admiral Hayes appeared on the screen, but something was different about him. He looked older, more serious, as if he had learned terrible secrets. "Captain Grant, you are ordered to return to your ship immediately. Prepare for full system activation under Protocol Lazarus." Chief Engineer Ryan Blake looked confused. "Admiral, we don't have any protocols called Lazarus in our system." Hayes was quiet for a moment. "You will in approximately 10 minutes. Be ready." The transmission ended, leaving the boarding party floating in confusion inside the ancient derelict. Lisa made the decision to return to the horizon immediately. When they reached their ship, strange things were happening. Panels that had never opened before were sliding apart throughout the vessel. Hidden compartments were revealing themselves in every section. "Captain, you need to see this," Ryan called from the engine room. His voice sounded amazed and frightened at the same time. Lisa rushed to engineering with Steve Parker. What they found changed everything they thought they knew about their ship. Behind the fusion reactor, massive weapon systems were emerging from concealed spaces. The walls themselves were moving, revealing technology that looked decades ahead of anything they had seen. "These aren't fusion engines," Ryan said, staring at displays that showed power systems he couldn't understand. "They're some kind of quantum drive system. And Captain, look at these power readings." The engine output displays showed numbers that made no sense. The horizon was generating enough power to supply a small city. More importantly, weapon systems were coming online that could destroy ships 10 times their size. Steve was examining the new tactical displays. "Captain, we have gravitational pulse cannons, quantum torpedo launchers, and something called a reality distortion field. I don't even know what half of these weapons do." Amy Foster was receiving data from systems she had never seen before. "Captain, I'm getting communication signals from across human space. Ships are waking up. Hundreds of them." Lisa sat in her command chair, trying to understand what was happening to her ship and her crew. "Amy, get me Admiral Hayes." When Hayes appeared on screen, he was standing in what looked like a military command center that Lisa had never seen before. "Admiral, what's happening to our ship?" Lisa asked. "Captain, your ship was never just an exploration vessel. The Horizon is a reconnaissance cruiser from humanity's ancient fleet. For the past 3 years, you've been flying one of the most advanced warships in the galaxy, disguised as a simple survey ship." Ryan's mouth fell open. "Sir, That's impossible. I've maintained these engines for 3 years. They're basic fusion systems. The fusion reactors were camouflage, Hayes explained. Real engines are quantum-based systems that can push your ship to speeds the Federation has never achieved. Your weapons can penetrate any known shield system. Steve was studying his new tactical displays. Admiral, these weapon specifications show firepower that exceeds Zephyrian dreadnoughts. How is that possible? Hayes looked tired. Because humanity has been spacefaring for over 15,000 years. Everything you've been told about our history is a lie designed to protect the galaxy from the truth. Meanwhile, on planets across human space, amazing transformations were taking place. The mining colony on Kepler 442b had always seemed like a simple resource extraction operation. Now the artificial mountains that covered the planet's surface were opening like flowers. Colonel Ben Anderson stood in the command center as his mining operation revealed its true nature. Beneath the planet's surface lay the largest starship, construction facility in the galaxy. Assembly lines that had been hidden for centuries were beginning to work again. Sir, we have 347 vessels in various stages of completion, reported his construction chief, Maria Santos. The automated systems say they can have 50 ships ready for deployment within 72 hours. Ben watched through massive windows as ships emerged from underground hangars. These weren't the simple cargo haulers that the galaxy knew human ships to be. They were sleek predators designed for war, each one equipped with technology that the Federation couldn't understand. On the agricultural world of New Montana, farmer Joe Miller was watching his wheat fields disappear. The ground was opening to reveal underground facilities that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. What the galaxy thought was a farming world was actually a massive military staging area. "Martha, come look at this," Joe called to his wife. They had lived on New Montana for 20 years, never knowing what lay beneath their feet. Martha Miller joined him as enormous hangars opened in what had been their backyard. Inside, they could see ships that made Krothak dreadnoughts look like toys. "Joe, what is all this?" Martha asked. "I think," Joe said slowly, "we've been living on top of the galaxy's biggest secret." Dr. Helen Brooks was deep underground in the Sahara Command Center, watching as the true scope of humanity's hidden power became clear. The screens around her showed the location of thousands of ships, weapons platforms, and military installations, scattered across the galaxy. "Mike! Kate, look at this data!" she called to her students. "These records show human settlements in star systems that were supposedly never explored." Mike Torres was reading historical files that described events from thousands of years ago. "Professor, according to this, humans had contact with the Zephyrians 12,000 years ago, but the official records say first contact happened only 200 years ago. Kate Williams was studying tactical reports from ancient wars. "Helen, these files describe human ships that could destroy entire fleets. There are battle records showing humans defeating coalitions of dozens of alien species." Helen was beginning to understand the truth. "We didn't discover Spaceflight 200 years ago. We've been hiding our real capabilities for over a millennium." The underground computer systems were now fully active. A synthetic voice spoke in the ancient English that Helen was learning to understand. "Global Defense Initiative Authentication. Confirmed. Admiral Hayes Command Authority verified. Lazarus Protocol fully activated. All assets reporting ready status." On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Jake Morrison was sitting in an emergency session of the Federation Council. The great powers were discussing their hopeless war against the Krothak Dominion when Jake received a priority message on his private communicator. Thea. Message was from Admiral Hayes. It contained a single line of text and a set of tactical data files. Jake. It's time to tell them who we really are. Jake looked at the tactical files. They showed human military capabilities that exceeded the combined forces of the entire Federation. Ships that could travel faster than Zephyrian vessels. Weapons that could penetrate any known defense. Industrial capacity that could build fleets in weeks instead of years. High Counselor Vexani was speaking about the desperate military situation when Jake stood up. "Honored delegates," Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Earth formally requests permission to deploy our full military capability against the Krothak Dominion." The chamber fell silent. Then Vexani began to laugh again, just as she had days before. "Full military capability? Your cargo ships and mining vessels? Please, Ambassador Morrison, we are discussing serious military matters." Jake activated his display projector. The tactical data from Admiral Hayes appeared in holographic form above the council chamber. The numbers and specifications were beyond anything the Federation had ever seen. "These are the specifications for one of our awakening facilities," Jake said calmly. "We have 437 such installations." The laughter stopped. Professor Kellen's bioelectric brain was processing the data at maximum speed. "These numbers," Kellen said slowly, "suggest construction capabilities that exceed our entire industrial base." War Commander Thexvar was studying the human tactical displays with growing concern. "These weapon specifications are impossible. No species possesses such technology." "You're right," Jake replied. "No current species possesses this technology, but humanity is not a current species. We are an ancient one that has been pretending to be young." The Federation Council sat in stunned silence as they realized that everything they knew about the balance of galactic power was wrong. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers was actually the oldest and most powerful civilization in the galaxy. Jake Morrison looked around the chamber at the faces of beings who had spent years treating humanity as inferior. "The question now is whether you want our help, or whether you prefer to face the Krothak alone." For the first time in Federation history, every delegate voted unanimously. They wanted humanity's help. As Jake left the council chamber, he knew that the galaxy would never be the same. The secret that humanity had kept for over 1,000 years was finally revealed. The quiet species was about to become very loud indeed. Commander Dan Miller opened his eyes for the first time in over 1,000 years. The stasis chamber around him was filled with mist as the revival systems brought him back to full consciousness. Through the clearing vapor, he could see the bridge of the UES Titan's wake, exactly as he had left it centuries ago. "Welcome back, Commander," said a familiar synthetic voice. "I am Artemis, the ship's artificial intelligence. The Lazarus Protocol has been activated." Dan sat up slowly, his body remembering how to function after such a long sleep. Around him, other stasis chambers were opening as his crew began to wake up. "Status report, Artemis," Dan said, his voice still rough from the long sleep. "We are currently positioned behind Jupiter's largest moon. Krothak invasion fleet has entered the Sol system. War Commander Thexvar's flagship and 47 escort vessels are approaching Earth's orbital defenses." Lieutenant Commander Sarah Lee emerged from her stasis chamber, quickly checking her tactical stations. As the ship's weapons officer, she had trained for this moment for decades before going into stasis. "Commander, all weapon systems show ready." "Status," Sarah reported. "Gravitational lance is charged and ready. Quantum torpedo launchers are loaded. Reality distortion fields are online. Chief Engineer Paul Turner was checking the massive engines that had kept the ship hidden for centuries. Quantum drives show full power, Commander. We can achieve maximum velocity within minutes. Dan walked to the main view screen, which showed the Krothak fleet approaching Earth. The enemy ships were massive, their hulls covered with weapons that had destroyed Federation fleets across the galaxy. Artemis, have you been monitoring galactic affairs during our sleep? Yes, Commander. The Krothak Dominion has achieved military superiority through quantum disruption weapons. Federation forces have suffered 97% casualties in recent engagements. The galaxy believes humanity to be a primitive species with limited military capabilities. Dan smiled grimly. Time to correct that misconception. Sarah, prepare to engage the enemy fleet. Sir, there are 48 Krothak vessels. Are you sure we should face them alone? Lieutenant Commander, how long have you been asleep? 1,043 years, sir. Then you've forgotten what this ship can do. Artemis, decloak the vessel and move us into attack position. The Titan's wake had been hiding behind Jupiter's moon for over 10 centuries, its advanced stealth systems making it invisible to any known sensors. Now, as the cloaking field deactivated, the ship revealed itself to be larger than any vessel in the Krothak fleet. War Commander Thexavar was on the bridge of his flagship when his sensors detected the massive human vessel. His tactical officer, Sub-Commander Vextar, stared at the readings in disbelief. War Commander, we are detecting a single human vessel, but the size readings must be incorrect. Thexvar looked at the tactical display. The human ship was 3 times the size of his largest dreadnought. Humans do not build ships of that size. Check your sensors. Sensors confirm, sir. The vessel is 2 kilometers long and heavily armed. We are receiving a transmission. Dan Miller's image appeared on the Krothak command screens. Behind him, the bridge of the Titan's wake showed technology that the Krothak had never seen before. War Commander, Thexavar, I am Commander Dan Miller of the United Earth Starfleet. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from this system before we open fire. Thexvar's red eyes glowed with anger. A single human ship threatens the entire Krothak invasion fleet? Your species' arrogance will be your destruction. 50 seconds, Dan replied calmly. Thexvar activated his fleet communications. All ships, destroy the human vessel. Show them the price of challenging the Krothak Dominion. The Krothak fleet opened fire with everything they had. Quantum disruption beams that had torn apart Federation dreadnoughts struck the Titan's wake's shields. The result shocked everyone watching. The human ship's shields absorbed the massive attack without even flickering. The energy weapons that had dominated galactic warfare for months simply disappeared against the Titan's wake's defenses. Impressive, Dan said. Sarah, return fire. 1 shot only. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Lee targeted the 3 largest Krothak cruisers with the ship's primary weapon. The gravitational lance fired a beam of pure force that manipulated gravity itself. The 3 Krothak ships simply came apart. Their hulls were torn into pieces at the molecular level as gravitational forces tore them apart from the inside. In seconds, 3 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy became clouds of metallic dust. The remaining Krothak fleet stopped firing. Thexvar stared at his tactical displays, unable to understand what he had just witnessed. What kind of weapon was that? Sub-Commander Vextar whispered. Something beyond our understanding, Thexvar replied. All ships, full retreat. Signal the High Command that we have encountered an unknown threat. But retreat was not an option. Dan Miller had spent 1,000 years waiting for this moment. Sarah, target their engines, disable the fleet, but do not destroy them. The Titan's Wake's secondary weapons fired with precise accuracy. Quantum torpedoes struck each Krothak ship's engine section, disabling their ability to escape without killing their crews. Within minutes, the entire Krothak invasion fleet was helpless. 47 warships that had conquered dozens of worlds were floating dead in space. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, more human ships were revealing themselves. Captain Nina Ross of the UES Thunder's Edge had been waiting in the asteroid belt around the Krothak homeworld for centuries. Her ship had watched as the Krothak built their empire, always ready to strike if needed. "Captain, we are receiving Lazarus Protocol activation signals," reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Mark Davis. Nina looked at the heavily defended Krothak homeworld below them. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet, along with the largest fleet base in Krothak space. "Mark, begin systematic strikes on military targets only. Avoid civilian areas." The Thunder's Edge had weapons designed specifically for this kind of operation. Precision quantum bombs materialized inside Krothak military installations, destroying weapon factories and ship construction facilities without harming nearby cities. Within hours, the military might that the Krothak had built over centuries was reduced to rubble. Their impregnable homeworld defenses proved useless against weapons that could phase through shields and armor. On the Federation world of Alteria Prime, the besieged population watched in amazement as a human ship appeared in orbit. The UES Solar Spear, commanded by Captain Bill Jackson, engaged the Krothak occupation force with weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. "Sir, the Krothak fleet is retreating," reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Susan Hayes. "Let them go," Bill replied. "Our job is to liberate the planet, not destroy every enemy ship." The Solar Spear used its reality distortion fields to rescue Federation survivors from the planet's surface. The technology allowed the ship to teleport people directly through solid matter, saving thousands of lives that would have been lost in a traditional ground assault. Back on Earth, Dr. Helen Brooks was watching the global situation unfold from the ancient command center. The displays around her showed human ships engaging Krothak forces across dozens of star systems. "Professor, look at these historical records," Kate Williams called out. "The files show that humanity has been preparing for this moment for over 15,000 years. Mike Torres was reading tactical analyses that had been written by commanders who died centuries ago. Helen, these plans anticipated every possible military scenario. Whoever designed this strategy thought centuries ahead." Helen was studying the deepest historical files, the ones that explained why humanity had hidden their true power for so long. "Mike, Kate, I think I understand now. According to these records, humanity achieved total galactic dominance 15,000 years ago. But instead of ruling the galaxy, they made a different choice." "What choice?" Kate asked. "They decided to withdraw from galactic affairs and let younger species develop naturally. Everything we've done for the past millennium has been designed to protect the galaxy while staying hidden." The files described humanity's philosophy of protective isolation. Rather than dominating other species, humans had chosen to act as secret guardians, intervening only when necessary to prevent galactic catastrophe. Admiral Hayes appeared on the command center's main screen. Behind him, the Global Defense Initiative's true headquarters buzzed with activity as humanity's hidden military came fully online. Dr. Brooks, we need those historical files. The President wants to understand our full capabilities before making any major decisions. Helen looked at the vast database around her. Admiral, these files contain the complete history of galactic civilization. Some of these records go back 50,000 years. How is that possible? Because humanity has been watching and protecting the galaxy for longer than any other species has existed. We're not just the oldest spacefaring civilization, we're the first. As the reports came in from across the galaxy, the scope of humanity's hidden power became clear. The species that other races had dismissed as primitive possessed technology that was centuries ahead of anything else in the galaxy. War Commander Thexvar, now a prisoner aboard the Titan's wake, faced Commander Dan Miller in what had once been the Krothak's moment of victory. Admiral Frank Hayes stood in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface, watching displays that showed the current military situation across the galaxy. 3 days had passed since humanity revealed their true capabilities, and the war was essentially over. Admiral, we have a transmission from War Commander Thexvar, reported Communications Officer Lisa Chen. Put him through. Thexvar appeared on the main screen. The Krothak leader was aboard the Titan's wake, technically a prisoner but treated with dignity by Commander Dan Miller's crew. Admiral Hayes, I wish to discuss terms of surrender. Frank nodded. I'm listening. My forces have been completely defeated. Your ships have disabled our fleets across 17 star systems without destroying them. This restraint is unexpected. Commander Miller should have explained our position, War Commander. He has. But I must ask, why did you not simply destroy us? Your weapons could have eliminated the Krothak Dominion entirely. Frank looked at the tactical displays showing Krothak ships disabled but intact throughout their former territory. Because destroying you was never our goal. We wanted to stop your aggression, not commit genocide. Thexvar was quiet for a long moment. In 1,500 years of Krothak history, no enemy has ever shown such restraint. We do not understand. Perhaps that's something your people need to learn. Strength without wisdom leads to destruction. 3 hours later, the formal surrender was signed. The Krothak Dominion agreed to withdraw from all occupied Federation worlds and submit to galactic peacekeeping forces. War Commander Thexvar would remain in protective custody while his people learn to exist without constant warfare. Captain Lisa Grant was now commanding an upgraded version of the Horizon, its true capabilities fully revealed. Her mission was to oversee the peaceful transition on former Krothak worlds. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the surface of Proxima 7, reported Amy Foster. Put it through. A Zephyrian colonial administrator appeared on screen. Governor Veltar had been captured during the Krothak invasion and held prisoner for weeks. Captain Grant, my people owe humanity a debt we can never repay. The speed of your rescue operation saved thousands of lives. Lisa was uncomfortable with the praise. We were just doing our job, Governor. No, Captain, your species has redefined what doing your job means. The Krothak occupation force surrendered within hours of your arrival. They knew resistance was pointless. Steve Parker was monitoring security on the planet's surface. Captain, the former prisoners are asking permission to establish a monument to human peacekeepers. Lisa shook her head. Tell them we appreciate the gesture, but monuments aren't necessary. We're not here to be worshipped. Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Brooks and her team had become the galaxy's most important historians overnight. The underground chamber in the Sahara had revealed records that changed everything anyone thought they knew about galactic civilization. Professor, you need to see this, Mike Torres called from his workstation. I found records of human contact with over 400 different species. Kate Williams was studying even older files. Helen, some of these records show humans helping species develop faster than light travel. We've been secretly guiding galactic development for thousands of years. Helen was reading the deepest archives, files that described humanity's original expansion into the galaxy 50,000 years ago. Mike, Kate, I think we need to understand something. Humanity didn't just hide their military power. They've been the secret guardians of galactic civilization since the beginning. The records showed that humans had achieved faster than light travel before any other known species. Instead of conquering the galaxy, they had chosen to help other races develop naturally while remaining hidden. Look at this, Kate said, pointing to a file dated 30,000 years ago. Humans secretly ended a war between the Alterian Collective and the Rigelian Empire by providing both sides with defensive technology that made offensive warfare pointless. Mike found records of human intervention during the Great Plague of 4739 BCE, when a biological weapon threatened to destroy all life in the Andromeda spiral arm. Professor, humans developed the cure and distributed it secretly through trade networks. Helen began to understand the scope of humanity's hidden influence. We haven't been hiding from the galaxy, we've been protecting it. On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Jake Morrison was dealing with a completely changed political situation. The Federation Council had unanimously elected him as the new Chancellor, not through politics, but through recognition of humanity's role as protectors. High Counselor Vexani approached Jake after the ceremonial installation. Her forearms moved in what Jake recognized as a gesture of respect. Chancellor Morrison, I owe your species an apology. For years, we treated humanity as inferior newcomers. High Counselor, there's no need for apologies. You reacted based on the information you had. But that information was deliberately false. Your species has been protecting us while allowing us to believe we were superior. Jake nodded. That was the point. If other species knew humanity's true capabilities, it would have prevented natural development. Fear of human dominance would have crippled galactic civilization. Professor Kellen's bioelectric brain was processing the implications of humanity's revealed history. Chancellor, the philosophical implications are staggering. Your species achieved ultimate power and chose not to use it. Power without responsibility is meaningless, Jake replied. Humanity learned that lesson a long time ago. Commander Dan Miller was preparing the Titan's wake for a new mission. The ancient protocols had been designed for more than just military operations. Artemis, prepare the medical bays for full activation, Dan ordered. Medical systems coming online, Commander. We are ready to begin healing operations. The Titan's wake carried medical technology that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. Nanobotic systems could repair damage at the cellular level. Quantum medical scanners could detect and treat conditions that Federation medicine couldn't even diagnose. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Lee was coordinating with Federation medical authorities. Commander, we have requests for medical assistance from 47 different worlds. Priority goes to worlds affected by the recent fighting. After that, we'll address the oldest medical problems. Chief Engineer Paul Turner was amazed by the ship's true capabilities. Sir, these medical systems can extend lifespans by centuries. We could help entire species achieve near immortality. Dan was thoughtful. Paul, we need to be careful about how quickly we introduce advanced technology. Sudden changes can be more harmful than helpful. The ancient protocols included detailed guidelines for technological transfer. Humanity had learned from experience that giving advanced technology to unprepared civilizations often led to disaster. Captain Nina Ross was leading a fleet of human vessels toward the galactic rim. Long-range sensors had detected something approaching from outside the galaxy that even humanity's ancient databases classified as potentially dangerous. "Captain, we're detecting artificial structures approximately 50 light-years beyond the galactic edge," reported Lieutenant Mark Davis. "What kind of structures?" "Unknown design, but massive in scale. The objects appear to be constructed from materials that don't exist in our periodic table." Nina studied the sensor readings. This was why humanity had built their hidden fleet. Not just to protect the galaxy from internal threats, but to guard against external ones. "Signal the fleet. We investigate these structures together. If they represent a threat, we handle it before it reaches inhabited systems." As humanity's true role became clear, the galaxy began to reorganize itself around new realities. The species that had been dismissed as primitive were actually the most advanced civilization in known space. More importantly, they had used that advancement to protect and guide others rather than dominate them. Dr. Helen Brooks published her findings about humanity's secret history, fundamentally changing how every species understood their place in the galaxy. The revelation that humans had been helping other civilizations develop for tens of thousands of years created a new perspective on galactic evolution. War Commander Thexvar, now working with human peacekeepers to reform Krothak society, began to understand what true strength meant. "Commander Miller," he said during one of their regular discussions, "my people have always believed that power meant the ability to destroy enemies." "What do you believe now?" Dan asked. "I am beginning to think that real power means the ability to create allies." The new galactic order was based on cooperation rather than competition. Humanity's advanced technology was shared gradually with species that demonstrated wisdom and responsibility. The galaxy entered an age of unprecedented peace and prosperity. But the greatest change was philosophical. The revelation that the most powerful species in the galaxy had chosen to serve rather than rule provided a new model for civilization. Strength was measured not by the ability to conquer, but by the willingness to protect. As Captain Ross led her fleet toward the unknown threat beyond the galactic rim, she knew that humanity was no longer hiding. They had revealed themselves as the galaxy's guardians, and they would face whatever challenges came next together with the species they had protected for so long.